Good afternoon from my side. I'm Joscha Rosenbusch. I'm working with GIZ, which is the German Development Cooperation Agency, in a program that is called Partnership for Energy Efficiency in Buildings. We are implementing this together with the French Agence Française de Développement, so the AFD. I also have the honor to co-chair the finance hub of the Global Alliance for Building and Construction, and I'm here in this capacity. Yeah. Sorry, I think, and there you go. The GlobalABC Finance Hub is, well, let me start with GlobalABC maybe. If you're not familiar, it's a network of institutions who are working on sustainable buildings. It has a secretariat that is run by UNEP, based in Paris, and it has over 400 institutions that are members. If you're not yet member, please join. It's a very good space to collaborate and discuss. And we are organized in thematic hubs. So one of them is the Finance Hub. And the Finance Hub is co-chaired by IFC. So from Omid, who is also based in Washington, and by PEEB, which is a program that I'm leading, so with me. We are roughly 70 institutions that are, let's say, members of this hub. Not everybody always shows up, obviously. There are also some, let's say, some people that might not even remember that they're members of the Finance Hub, but there's a core of institutions who are actively working on it. And what we are trying to do is we try to organize and orchestrate collective action of institutions working on finance for the building sector. So here are some pieces of work that we are currently undertaking. I will not go through all of them, but maybe one thing that I can say is we have started to run, let's say, an initiative to strengthen the capacities of national and subnational development banks and commercial banks on developing a green building portfolio in the operations, which is something that IFC is obviously doing, but also from the PEEB side, we are joining forces there. The GlobalABC produces every year a status report, and the last version has just been published. It has been launched at the World Urban Forum in Baku a month back. I will share some of the findings of this report with you. First one is buildings obviously are very important for climate action. They account for 37% of energy-related emissions. I think this is quite known. We also observe that the gap of the net zero pathway for the building sector that has been, let's say, set up by the IEA, but also by the GlobalABC, is widening. So we are not on track. We are off track, and it's getting worse. So we need to get back on track. That's quite important. We see that there is the construction globally is growing. This is normal. It will continue to grow. But the thing is that the additions on floor space is outpacing the achievements that we are getting on the reduction of energy intensity per square meter. Yeah? So we have a global increase of emissions, even though we are uncoupling the dynamics, but we have an outpacing of the additions, which is a trend that needs to be reverted. On the left side here, this graph, you see the dynamics since the last 10 years, basically since EDGE was initiated, and also since PEEB was initiated. We also are 10 years old. What is maybe interesting to see is that there is this blue dotted path, which is basically a straight line to net zero. It has been criticized quite a lot by international scholars because you can't just draw a straight line to net zero, but this is what the report does. And you see that, against this, the path to net zero, the energy intensity is not reducing sufficiently. Yeah? So we have a widening gap that I was referring to before. There is some reduction in energy efficiency, energy intensity over the last years, but it's not enough. And we know that, compared to the levels that we currently have, we would need to reduce 25% until 2030 to get back on track. That's the scenario. Now, 2 weeks back, or 3 weeks, during the Bonn climate negotiations meetings, the Turkish presidency of COP31 has announced the first ever building-related climate action goal or target that reads that the energy consumption the consumption intensity in the building sector should be at least reduced by 25% until 2035. So this is 5 years later than what the trajectory indicates out of the global status report. Yeah? So I did a small graph to illustrate what this means. This is the graph that you saw before. We are here now. This is this dotted line that has been criticized. And here we have the reduction that would be the target from the Turkish presidency. And this would be, let's say, the curve that is back on track. Yeah? So we see that if we achieve the action that the Turkish presidency has set out, we would need to get a cliff, and a deep decarbonization after 2025. So I guess there will be quite some political discussions around this target that has been formulated. Just saying that we also have a delta when it comes to finance. This is also increasing. So in order to achieve net zero by 2035, there is a need to invest by 2030 $5.9 trillion into energy efficient buildings. We are not there, and we are off track also when it comes to the accumulated. So also an increase in investments is required. There was a study recently launched, an NSERB Financing Facility Survey, where we assessed the international landscape of available financing and technical assistance that would be deployed usually by international financing institutions and development cooperation providers. And it kind of provides a baseline where we are. Quick results from this, so this is the financing survey. Quick results from this, and I think it's not a big surprise. It exists, but it's quite fragmented. It's not targeted enough, and it's not sufficient. Yeah, so we need to ramp up and increase financing and the instruments that we have available on many fronts. It has a relatively small portfolio in many of the multilateral financial institutions. Mainly they provide technical assistance, not so much investments. So instruments are more grant-based and not loan-based or debt-based. And we also observe that there's a critical misalignment in the ecosystem, including when it comes to the development of investment project pipelines. The study has come up with some recommendations around what elements we can tap into in order to organize an integrated framework to scale the investments into net zero buildings. I will not also go through it because I only have 10 minutes and I already got the time mark. But let's say we are talking about standardized criteria, business models, local capacities, and in the end, many of the actors that are organized in the finance hub are working somehow on some of these elements. Yeah. Some trends that are positive nature. We see an uptake of sustainable taxonomies in many markets. Not enough, 14, but it's something tangible and important to mention. And we estimate that taxonomies will have a stronger penetration in many other markets in the future. Certification pathways, programs like EDGE really have, let's say, an effect on the market. De-risking and innovation. We see more emissions of green bonds worldwide that relate to the building sector. And many more policies are being put in place. Eleni mentioned the ones in Europe that are obviously quite important to drive also investments into the sector. Quick trends from Europe. Maybe if you look at the bars on the right and the color codes, you see that the increase over the last 10 years in investments has been driven mainly by Europe. So the other regions are lagging behind when it comes to increasing the investments. So the increase of investments is driven by the European markets, but has also slowed down in the recent, let's say, years, because some important support mechanisms in Germany, etc., has been cut back by public policy decisions. We also see stronger regulations, with the directive, with the standards that are being put in place, the taxonomy, etc., that are kind of raising the bar and also directing investments into the right direction, maybe. Reporting requirements on sustainability, both in the industry, but also for the financial institutions, are really a driver. We see that the transparency that comes along with this triggers investments into more sustainable buildings. We also see that there are, let's say, an expansion of green financing approaches and tools that are waved into financing and business models increasingly, in many different forms. This is my last slide. Just saying that, within the Finance Hub, we are working on some of the pieces that have been mentioned also in this framework. For example, World Green Building Council are working on sustainability frameworks for taxonomies. Some country colleagues are working on developing roadmaps for finance in the respective countries. So the first one is work on Jordan that we're currently implementing. The colleagues from UNEP FI and their network with commercial banks, they're working on financing model for retrofits, which is really interesting. It's more focused on Europe also. Very interesting element. There's a strong work on property-linked finance, which is a model that has been quite successful in the United States and is basically now being adopted in Europe in some jurisdictions. And there's potential to roll this out in other regions. We are checking the potential to include also carbon markets and carbon finance into business models in some of the countries. And as I mentioned at the beginning, we are working on developing capacities in financial institutions to grow the portfolio of energy, of green buildings in their operations. And with this, I'm good. And thank you very much for the attention.